The afternoon sun streamed through the kitchen window, casting warm patches of light across the wooden table where Dion sat hunched over his math homework. The house was quiet except for the soft ticking of the wall clock and the occasional scratch of his pencil. At 11 years old, Dion took pride in being responsible when his dad worked night shifts at Memorial Hospital across town. "Mom, is it okay if I have some juice?" he called out, tapping his pencil against the edge of his textbook. The sixth-grade math problems weren't too hard, but he needed a break. No answer came from down the hall. "Mom," Dion called again, pushing back his chair. His mother, Tanya, was 8 months pregnant with his baby sister. Lately, she tired easily and often took short rests throughout the day. Maybe she's just napping, he thought, sliding off his chair. He padded across the kitchen floor in his socked feet, heading toward the bathroom where he'd last heard water running. "Mom, I was thinking maybe we could—" The words died in his throat as he pushed open the bathroom door. Tanya lay crumpled on the tile floor, one arm awkwardly bent beneath her swollen belly. Her eyes were half open but unfocused, and a small pool of dark red blood was spreading slowly beneath her. For one terrible moment, Dion couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The world narrowed to just his mother's still form on the cold bathroom floor. "Mom!" The cry tore from his throat as he dropped to his knees beside her.
"Mom, can you hear me?"
Tanya's eyelids fluttered and a weak moan escaped her lips. Her hand twitched as if trying to reach for him. "It's okay, I'm here," Dion said, fighting to keep his voice steady even as his heart hammered against his ribs. "I'm gonna get help." His mind raced through what he'd learned in the school safety presentation last month. Call 911, that was the first step. He needed to call 911. "I'll be right back," he promised, squeezing his mother's hand before scrambling to his feet. He ran to the living room where his mother's phone sat charging on the side table. His fingers trembled so badly he had to try twice to unplug it. Back at his mother's side, he swiped open the phone and dialed 911, putting the call on speaker so he could hold his mother's hand. Each ring seemed to last forever. "Please pick up. Please pick up," he whispered, watching his mother's chest rise and fall with shallow breaths. The baby, his little sister, was she okay in there? His dad had mentioned something last week about pregnancy complications. He'd overheard his parents talking late at night, his father's voice low and concerned as he told Tanya to call him immediately if she felt any sharp pains or dizziness. "When? What's your emergency?" The voice finally came through the speaker, snapping Dion back to the present. "My mom, she's pregnant and she fell in the bathroom," Dion said, the words tumbling out. "There's blood and she can't really talk, and my dad's at work and I don't know what to do." "Okay, I need you to take a deep breath," the dispatcher said. "What's your address?" 1423 Oakwood Drive, Dion replied, his voice steadying slightly. "Please hurry. And your name?" "Dion Williams." "I'm 11. Is your mother conscious, Dion?" He looked down at Tanya, whose eyes were now closed. "Kind of. She opened her eyes before, but now they're closed again. She made a noise when I talked to her." "Can you tell if she's breathing?" Dion leaned closer, placing his hand near her nose and mouth like he'd seen in movies. "Yes, she's breathing, but it sounds weird. Kind of gasping." "How far along is her pregnancy?" 8 months. The baby's a girl. We're supposed to name her Zoe." His voice cracked on his sister's name and he swallowed hard against the lump forming in his throat. He couldn't cry now. His mom and baby sister needed him to be strong. "Is there anyone else in the house with you, Dion?" "No, just me and Mom. My dad's working at Memorial Hospital." "He's a nurse there." As he spoke, Tanya's body suddenly tensed and a low moan escaped her lips. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy with pain. "Mom's waking up," Dion said urgently into the phone. "Mom, can you hear me?" "Help is coming." Tanya's lips moved, trying to form words, but only managed a weak whisper. "Baby. The baby." Her hand moved weakly to her stomach and fresh fear shot through Dion. "Something's wrong with the baby," he told the dispatcher. "My mom's trying to tell me something about the baby." "Try to keep her calm and still," the dispatcher instructed. "Don't let her move around too much. Help is on the way, but was it?" Dion suddenly realized the dispatcher hadn't actually confirmed that an ambulance was coming. "You did send an ambulance, right?" he asked, panic edging back into his voice. There was a slight pause before the dispatcher responded. "Yes, we're dispatching emergency services to your location. Now, is the bleeding getting worse?" Dion glanced at the floor. The small pool of blood seemed to have stopped spreading, but Tanya's face had grown paler, a sheen of sweat breaking out across her forehead. I don't think so. But my mom looks really sick. Her face is all white and sweaty. Dion, do you know if your mother has any medical conditions besides the pregnancy? No, I don't think so. My dad says she's healthy, but that sometimes pregnancies can get complicated. He hesitated, then added, My dad's a nurse. He would know what to do. Tanya's eyes opened again, more alert this time. Dion, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Call. Your father. Mom wants me to call my dad, Dion relayed to the dispatcher. Should I do that? I only have one phone. Stay on the line with me, the dispatcher said. The paramedics need to know what's happening. Can you put something soft under your mother's head? Dion looked around frantically, then pulled a folded towel from the bathroom shelf. With gentle movements, he lifted his mother's head just enough to slide the towel underneath. There you go, Mom, he said softly. I put a towel under your head. Does that feel better? Tanya managed a slight nod, her eyes fixed on her son's face. Despite her pain, she tried to smile reassuringly. You're doing so good, she whispered. My brave boy. The words sent a surge of determination through Dion. He straightened his shoulders and spoke clearly into the phone. How long until the ambulance gets here? We live in Oak Meadows. It's the neighborhood just past the mall. Another pause. They're en route now. Can you go to the front door and turn on the porch light so they can find your house easily? I don't want to leave my mom, Dion said, looking worriedly at Tanya. It'll just take a second and it will help them find you faster. Dion hesitated, then squeezed his mother's hand. Mom, I need to turn on the porch light. I'll be right back, okay? Tanya managed another weak nod, and Dion sprinted to the front door, flipping on both the porch light and the living room lights for good measure. He rushed back to the bathroom, relieved to find his mother still conscious. I did it, he told both his mother and the dispatcher. All the lights are on. As he knelt beside Tanya again, he noticed her breathing had become more labored. Her hand clutched at her swollen belly, her face contorted in pain. I think something's really wrong, Dion said urgently. She's having trouble breathing and she keeps holding her stomach like it hurts a lot. The paramedics will be there soon, the dispatcher replied. But Dion thought he detected hesitation in her voice. The minutes ticked by agonizingly slowly. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. Dion kept talking to his mother, holding her hand, telling her about his day at school, about the science project he was working on, anything to keep her awake and distracted from the pain. But Tanya's responses grew weaker, her eyes staying closed for longer periods. They're taking too long, Dion said finally, unable to keep the accusation from his voice. We live 10 minutes from the fire station. They should be here by now. What's your neighborhood called again? The dispatcher asked. Oak Meadows. We're on Oakwood Drive, house number 1423. It's the blue house with white shutters and a big oak tree in the front yard. Another pause. And you said it's just you and your mother there? Something in the dispatcher's tone made Dion frown. Why did that matter? Why was she asking these questions instead of sending help? Yes, just us. My dad's at work. Please, my mom needs help right now. Tanya's grip on his hand suddenly tightened, her back arching slightly as a moan of pain escaped her lips. Mom, Dion cried, dropping the phone to support her shoulders. Mom, what's wrong? The baby, Tanya gasped, her eyes wide with fear. Something's wrong with the baby. Call your father. Dion grabbed the phone again. Did you hear that? My mom says something's wrong with the baby. Where is the ambulance? They're on their way, the dispatcher said, but her tone lacked urgency. Stand by, stand by? Dion couldn't believe what he was hearing. Stand by while his mother and baby sister were in danger? No, we can't stand by. My mom needs help now. His voice rose with desperate frustration. Outside, no sirens wailed. No flashing lights appeared through the windows. Just the quiet neighborhood and the ticking clock on the wall, marking precious minutes slipping away. Dion looked at his mother's pale face, at her hand protectively curved around her belly where his little sister fought for life, and made a decision. The system had failed them. It was up to him now. I have to go, he told the dispatcher, his young voice suddenly firm with resolve. You're not helping us. Without waiting for a response, he ended the call. His father had always taught him that in an emergency, you had to think clearly and act decisively. This was definitely an emergency, and Dion knew exactly what he needed to do next. He squeezed his mother's hand one more time. Don't worry, Mom, if they won't help us, I'll find someone who will. As Tanya's eyes fluttered open again, meeting his with a mix of pain and pride, Dion stood up. His hands had stopped shaking. His mind was clear now, focused entirely on saving his mother and sister. He had a plan. Dion stared at the phone in disbelief. The 911 dispatcher had put them on standby, whatever that meant. His mother lay on the bathroom floor, her breathing shallow, one hand still protectively curved around her pregnant belly. Every second that passed without help felt like betrayal. He dialed 911 again, determined to reach someone else, someone who would actually send help. 911. What's your emergency? This time a different voice answered. Male, brisk, professional. My mom is pregnant and she collapsed in our bathroom, Dion said, speaking quickly but clearly. There's blood and she's in and out of consciousness. I already called once, but nobody came. What's your address, son? 1423 Oakwood Drive in Oak Meadows. Please hurry. There was a brief pause and Dion heard keyboard clicking. I see a call from this address already in the system, the dispatcher said, his tone changing slightly. It shows a unit has been assigned but not dispatched yet. What does that mean? Dion demanded, frustration building. My mom needs help now. She's 8 months pregnant and something's really wrong. Let me speak with my supervisor about this. Please hold. No, don't put me on hold, Dion nearly shouted, but the line had already gone quiet. He looked down at his mother. Tanya's eyes were closed again, her breathing more labored than before. The clock on the wall showed 15 minutes had passed since his first call. Mom, can you hear me? Dion asked, gently squeezing her hand. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused with pain. Dion, she whispered. The baby, contractions. Too early. Ice shot through Dion's veins. The baby wasn't supposed to come for another month. He remembered his father talking about premature births, how dangerous they could be. The dispatcher's voice suddenly returned. I'm still here. Can you tell me more about your mother's condition? She just told me she's having contractions, Dion said. The baby's not supposed to come for another month. Please, we need help. Is there someone else in the house with you? Another adult? Dion frowned. Why was the dispatcher asking this again? No, it's just me and my mom. My dad's working at Memorial Hospital. He's a nurse on the night shift. And what's your name, caller? Dion Williams. I'm 11. His patience was wearing thin. Look, my mom is really sick. There's blood on the floor. Why aren't you sending an ambulance? There was another pause, longer this time. Dion could hear muffled voices in the background. I'm showing that a dispatcher named Vicky already took your information, the male voice finally said. She noted that this call was questionable priority. Questionable priority? Dion repeated, his voice cracking with disbelief. What does that even mean? My mom is pregnant and bleeding. How is that not a priority? Son, I need you to calm down. No, I won't calm down. Tears of frustration burned in Dion's eyes. My mom and my baby sister could die because nobody's coming to help us. Is it because we live in Oak Meadows? Is it because we're black? The question hung in the air, met with telling silence. Then, I'm going to need to speak with an adult at your location. Dion wanted to scream. There is no adult. That's why I'm calling you. My mom is the adult and she's unconscious. As if to underscore his point, Tanya let out a soft moan, her body tensing with what Dion now recognized as a contraction. Mom's having another contraction, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. Please just send an ambulance. I'm begging you. Stay on the line. I need to consult with my supervisor again. Put on hold once more. Dion felt a strange calm settle over him. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. For some reason, these people weren't going to help his family. The realization hit him with stunning clarity. He looked at his mother's phone. 20 minutes since his first call. No sirens in the distance. No help coming. Tanya's eyes opened clearer than before. She seemed to understand something was wrong. Dion? She gasped between short breaths. Your father. Call him directly, of course. His dad would know what to do, would make sure help came. Dion squeezed his mother's hand. The 911 people put me on hold again, he told her. I'm going to call Dad, okay? Just hang on. He ended the 911 call without waiting for the dispatcher to return. What was the point? He'd given them every chance to help, and they'd made their choice. He scrolled through his mother's contacts until he found Michael Work. His dad always kept his phone on vibrate mode during shifts, checking it whenever he could. Dion hit the call button, silently pleading for his father to answer. 1 ring. 2 rings, 3. Tanya, everything okay, honey? His father's voice, concerned but calm, was the most beautiful sound Dion had ever heard. Dad, it's me, Dion said, his voice breaking. Mom collapsed in the bathroom. She's bleeding and having contractions. I called 911 twice, but they won't send anybody. What? Slow down, son. Your mother is having contractions? Yes, and there's blood on the floor. She keeps going in and out of consciousness. He heard his father's sharp intake of breath, followed by the sound of movement. That sounds like placental abruption. It's very serious. You said you called 911? Twice, Dad. The first lady put us on standby, whatever that means. The second person kept putting me on hold and asking if there was an adult there. They're not sending help. A brief silence, then his father's voice, tight with controlled anger. I understand. Listen to me carefully, Dion. I'm going to hang up and call my supervisor to send an ambulance directly from the hospital. It might take a few minutes longer than from the fire station, but they'll come, I promise. Okay, Dion said, relief flooding through him. While I do that, I need you to help your mom. Can you do that? Yes, good man. Put the phone on speaker and set it down. I need you to check a few things for me. Dion did as instructed, placing the phone near his mother's head. Tanya, honey, it's Michael. Can you hear me? His father called out. Tanya's eyes fluttered. Michael, she whispered. The baby, I know, love. Dion called me and I'm getting help. Right now I need you to stay as still as possible. His father's voice shifted to a professional tone. Dion, I need you to tell me how often the contractions are coming. Dion looked at his mother uncertainly. I don't know. How can I tell? When her body tenses up and she's in more pain, that's a contraction. Try to time between them using the clock on the wall. As if on cue, Tanya gasped, her body stiffening. She's having one now, Dion reported. Watching the second hand on the clock, okay? Time until the next one. While they waited, his father asked more questions. How much blood was there? Was it still flowing? Was Tanya's skin cold or clammy? Dion answered each question as best he could, watching his mother with growing concern. Her face had taken on a grayish tinge, and her breathing seemed more labored than before. 4 minutes later, another contraction hit. 4 minutes apart, Dion reported. That's too close, his father said, his voice tight. Dion, listen carefully. I've spoken to Dr. Rivera. He's sending an ambulance from the hospital, but it will take at least 10 minutes to reach you. Tanya moaned, her hand clutching her belly. Michael, the baby's coming. Dion heard his father take a deep breath. Dion, I need you to check something. Can you see if the baby is starting to come? Dion's eyes widened in shock. Dad, I know this is scary, son, but you can do it. Your mom and sister need you to be brave right now. Steeling himself, Dion looked where his father instructed. What he saw made his heart race with panic. Dad, I think I can see the baby's head. Okay, this is happening faster than I thought, his father said, his voice calm but urgent. Dion, you're going to have to help deliver your sister. The world seemed to tilt around Dion. He was 11 years old. How could he possibly deliver a baby? But looking at his mother's pale face, at the blood on the floor, he knew there was no choice. Tell me what to do, he said, his young voice steady with newfound resolve. Over the next few minutes, his father talked him through preparations. Gather clean towels. Wash his hands thoroughly. Position his mother as comfortably as possible. The most important thing, his father explained, is to support the baby's head as it comes out. Don't pull. Just support. Another contraction hit, stronger than before. Tanya cried out, her hands gripping the edge of the bathtub. It's happening, Dad, Dion said, his heart pounding as he followed his father's instructions. You're doing great, both of you, his father encouraged. Tanya, when the next contraction comes, I need you to push. Michael, Tanya gasped, tears streaming down her face. I'm scared, I know, love. But our son is right there with you and I'm on the phone. We're going to get through this together. In the distance, Dion finally heard what he'd been waiting for, the wail of a siren growing louder. Dad, I think the ambulance is coming. Thank God, his father breathed. Stay with your mom. They'll be there any minute. But the baby wasn't waiting for the ambulance. Another powerful contraction gripped Tanya, and she bore down with a primal cry of pain and determination. The head is coming out more, Dion reported, trying to stay calm as he supported his sister's emerging head just as his father had instructed. Perfect, son. You're doing everything right. One more big push should do it. The front door burst open and Dion heard footsteps rushing toward the bathroom. Relief washed over him as two paramedics appeared in the doorway, equipment in hand. Thank God you're here, Dion said, looking up with tears in his eyes. My mom's having the baby right now. The female paramedic quickly took over, kneeling beside Tanya. You did amazing, kid. We'll take it from here. Dion moved aside, trembling with adrenaline and exhaustion. He picked up the phone. Dad, the paramedics are here now. Good. Let me speak to one of them. Dion handed the phone to the male paramedic, who listened intently to his father's rapid explanation of the situation. As the professionals worked to stabilize his mother and deliver his sister, Dion stood in the doorway, watching. The female paramedic glanced up at him with unmistakable respect in her eyes. Your dad says you're the one who called this in, she said as she worked. He also says the 911 dispatch didn't send anyone. Dion nodded, suddenly aware of the weight of what had happened, and what had almost happened. They didn't believe me, he said quietly. The first lady, she sounded different when I told her where we live. And then the second person kept asking for an adult. The paramedics exchanged a look that Dion couldn't quite interpret. Well, it's a good thing you called your dad, the male paramedic said, and it's an even better thing you kept your head. Not many grown-ups could have done what you just did. A thin, high-pitched cry suddenly filled the bathroom, the sound of a newborn baby taking her first breath. Despite everything, Dion smiled. His sister had arrived, but his relief was short-lived. As the paramedics lifted his mother onto a stretcher, her eyes closed and her skin alarmingly pale, he heard one of them speak urgently into a radio. We need blood, stat. Mother's hemorrhaging. Infant premature but stable, en route to Memorial in 3 minutes. Dion watched as they wheeled his mother and new sister toward the front door, his heart sinking. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The female paramedic turned to him. Grab whatever you need, kiddo. You're coming with us. As Dion quickly gathered his mother's purse and phone, a cold determination settled in his chest. The system that was supposed to protect them had failed his family because of one person's prejudice. His mother and sister were alive for now, but only because he had refused to give up. That was something he would never forget. And as he climbed into the back of the ambulance, watching the paramedics work frantically to save his mother's life, he made a silent promise. This wouldn't happen to anyone else. Not if he had anything to say about it. The ambulance siren wailed as they sped through the streets of Oak Meadows toward Memorial Hospital. Dion sat pressed against the side wall, making himself as small as possible while the paramedics worked frantically over his mother. The female paramedic, her name tag read Lopez, monitored the tiny bundle that was his newborn sister, wrapped in a silver thermal blanket. Blood pressures dropping, the male paramedic reported, his voice tight. Push another unit of fluids. Dion watched, his heart hammering in his chest. His mother lay still, oxygen mask covering her face, an IV line running into her arm. Her skin had an ashen quality that frightened him more than the blood or the frantic activity. Is my mom going to be okay? He asked, his voice small against the wail of the siren. Paramedic Lopez glanced at him, her expression softening momentarily. We're doing everything we can, she said. Your mom's a fighter, and so is your little sister. Dion looked at the tiny bundle. All he could see was a small reddish face, eyes squeezed shut. His sister. The thought felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. How far out? The male paramedic asked into his radio. 2 minutes to Memorial, came the crackling response. Trauma team standing by. Copy that, he replied, then looked at Dion. Your dad's waiting for us. He's already told the doctors what to expect. Dion nodded, clinging to that small comfort. His dad would know what to do. His dad always knew what to do. The ambulance swung into the emergency bay of Memorial Hospital with a squeal of tires. The back doors flew open and suddenly there was a flurry of activity. A team in scrubs pulled his mother's stretcher out while a woman in a white coat gently took the bundle containing his sister. Tanya Williams, 34, placental abruption with hemorrhage. Paramedic Lopez reported rapidly. Emergency delivery on scene. Infant approximately 4 weeks premature. Mother's BP is 80/40 and dropping. 2 large-bore IVs established, 2 units of fluid given. The doctor nodded, barking orders as they wheeled his mother through the automatic doors. Another doctor, This one, focused entirely on the baby, moved just as quickly in a different direction. "Hey, wait!" Dion called out, suddenly realizing he was about to be separated from both his mother and sister. "Where are they taking them, Dion?" His father's voice cut through the chaos. Dion turned to see his dad running toward him, still in his navy blue scrubs. His father swept him into a fierce hug, lifting him off his feet. "Dad?" Dion whispered, finally allowing tears to come. "Mom's really sick." "I know, son," his father said, setting him down but keeping a hand on his shoulder. "But she's in the best possible place now. Dr. Rivera is the best OB surgeon in the city." "And the baby?" "My sister? She's going to the NICU. That's a special unit for babies who need extra care. Dr. Chen is with her. She's in good hands." His father guided him through the emergency department doors and into the bustling hospital. They didn't follow the trauma team that had taken his mother. "Can't we go with Mom?" Dion asked. His father shook his head. "They're taking her straight to surgery. We need to wait. But first I want you to tell me exactly what happened with those 911 calls." They found seats in a quiet corner of the waiting room. His father's face grew increasingly grim as Dion recounted his experience. The first dispatcher's dismissive tone, the way she'd put them on standby after learning where they lived. The second dispatcher repeatedly putting him on hold. "Dad, they just didn't care." Dion finished, his voice breaking. "If I hadn't called you," his father pulled him close. "But you did call me. You did exactly the right thing every step of the way." He took a deep breath, and Dion could feel anger radiating from him like heat. This should never have happened, never. A nurse approached them, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Williams? We need some information for your wife's chart." As his father filled out paperwork, Dion noticed a tall man in a police uniform enter the emergency department. The officer spoke briefly to the receptionist, who pointed toward Dion and his father. "Mr. Williams?" the officer said, approaching them. "I'm Captain Reynolds. I understand there was an issue with the 911 response to your home tonight." His father stood, his expression carefully controlled. "That's right. My 11-year-old son called twice and no units were dispatched. If he hadn't called me directly, my wife and newborn daughter might not have survived." Captain Reynolds' face tightened. "I'd like to hear what happened, if that's okay." For the third time that night, Dion recounted the 911 calls. This time the captain took notes, his expression darkening. "Son, the first dispatcher, can you remember her name?" Dion shook his head. "The second dispatcher mentioned someone named Vicky. Vicky Harmon," the captain muttered, writing something down. "She was on duty tonight. You know who it is?" Dion's father asked sharply. Captain Reynolds hesitated, then nodded. "We've had previous complaints." "Previous complaints?" His father's voice rose. "And she was still taking emergency calls?" Before the captain could respond, a nurse hurried into the waiting area. "Mr. Williams? Your daughter has been stabilized. If you'd like to see her?" His father looked torn, glancing between Dion and the nurse. "Go," Dion said. "I'll be okay." "I can stay with him if that's all right," Captain Reynolds offered. "We still have some things to discuss." His father nodded gratefully and followed the nurse. Once they were alone, the captain sat beside Dion. "I want you to know that I'm taking this very seriously," he said. "We have protocols for emergency response. What happened tonight violated those protocols." "Because we live in Oak Meadows?" Dion asked bluntly. "Because we're black?" The captain looked straight at him. "I can't say for certain yet, but that's what I'm going to find out." "It's not just about us," Dion said, suddenly feeling much older than his 11 years. "What if this happened to someone else? What if nobody else thought to call for help another way?" "You're right," Captain Reynolds said. "And that's why I need your help. I'm going to need a full statement from you. Everything you remember about those calls." As they talked, Dion noticed more people arriving in the waiting room. His mother's friend who lived down the street, his father's co-workers, even his math teacher. Mrs. Chen, word was spreading. His father returned, looking both exhausted and relieved. "The baby's doing well, all things considered. 4 pounds, 6 ounces. Her lungs are a little underdeveloped, but she's a fighter." "Like Mom," Dion said. "Like Mom." His father agreed, his voice catching. "They're still working on her. The blood loss was significant. But Dr. Rivera is the best." Dion noticed his father's scrub shirt was stained with dried blood, his mother's blood. The reality of how close they'd come to losing her hit him again. A woman in a sharp business suit approached them, introducing herself as the hospital administrator. "Mr. Williams, I've just been briefed on the situation. I want you to know that Memorial Hospital will be filing a formal complaint with the Emergency Services Board regarding tonight's events." "Thank you," his father said. "But that's not enough. This can't happen again." "Not to anyone," the hospital administrator nodded grimly. "I agree. We're already in contact with the mayor's office. This isn't the first time we've heard of response delays to certain neighborhoods." "Certain neighborhoods," his father repeated, his voice bitter. "You mean black neighborhoods?" She met his gaze steadily. "Yes, that's exactly what I mean." Captain Reynolds rejoined the conversation. "We're pulling the 911 call recordings and dispatcher logs. I've also ordered a full review of response times across all city districts for the past 6 months." Dion listened, understanding that something bigger than just his family's emergency was unfolding. His simple call for help had exposed a system that didn't value all lives equally. The hospital doors slid open again, and a tall man with a press badge entered, camera in hand. Behind him came a woman holding a microphone with the local news station's logo. "They've heard," the hospital administrator murmured. "Word travels fast." "Good," Dion's father said firmly. "Let them hear. Let everyone hear." But Dion wasn't listening anymore. A doctor in surgical scrubs had appeared at the entrance to the waiting room, scanning the faces until he found them. The expression on his face made Dion's stomach drop. "Mr. Williams," the doctor said, approaching them. "I'm Dr. Rivera. I've just come from surgery with your wife." "How is she?" his father asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Rivera's expression was grave. "She's alive, but her condition is critical. The hemorrhage was severe. We've given her 4 units of blood, but her body went into shock. Right now, she's on a ventilator in the ICU." Dion felt the room spin around him. A ventilator. He knew what that meant from his father's stories about the hospital. It meant his mother couldn't breathe on her own. "What are her chances?" his father asked, the medical professional in him taking over. Dr. Rivera placed a hand on his father's shoulder. "The next 24 hours will be crucial. She's young and was healthy before this." "That's in her favor." Dion's father nodded, his face a mask of controlled fear. "Can we see her?" "Yes, but just for a few minutes. She's not conscious." As they followed Dr. Rivera toward the ICU, Dion heard Captain Reynolds on his phone, his voice hard with controlled anger. "I want Vicky Harmon suspended immediately, pending investigation, and pull every call she's handled in the past month. Every single one." The ICU was eerily quiet compared to the chaos of the emergency department. Beeping monitors and soft footsteps were the only sounds. Dr. Rivera led them to a glass-walled room where Dion's mother lay surrounded by machines. Tubes and wires connected her to monitors and IV bags. The ventilator made a rhythmic whooshing sound as it pushed air into her lungs. Dion approached the bed slowly, shocked by how small and fragile his mother looked. Her stomach, no longer swollen with pregnancy, was now wrapped in surgical bandages. "Can she hear us?" he asked. "We don't know for sure," Dr. Rivera said gently, "but many people believe that patients can sometimes hear even when they're unconscious. You can talk to her if you want." Dion took his mother's hand carefully, avoiding the IV line. "Mom, it's me. The baby's okay. She's really small, but the doctors say she's doing good." His voice broke. "You need to get better so you can meet her. Dad and I need you." His father stood on the other side of the bed, one hand on Tanya's forehead, the other holding her free hand. Tears streamed silently down his face. One of the monitors suddenly emitted a different tone. Dr. Rivera moved quickly to check it. "Her blood pressure's dropping again," he said, pressing a button to call for assistance. "I need you both to step outside now." "What's happening?" Dion asked, panic rising in his chest. "She might be bleeding internally again," Dr. Rivera explained, already checking the surgical site. "We need to take her back to surgery, now." A team of nurses rushed in, moving with practiced efficiency as they prepared to transport Tanya back to the operating room. "Dad?" Dion's voice was small, frightened. His father put an arm around his shoulders, guiding him out of the room as the medical team worked. "She's in good hands, son. The best hands." But Dion could hear the fear in his father's voice. This wasn't supposed to happen. The ambulance had come eventually. The doctors were doing everything they could, but it might all be too late, because someone decided their emergency wasn't important enough. As they watched his mother being wheeled rapidly toward the operating room, Dayon felt something harden inside him, a resolve that went beyond fear, beyond anger. The reporter who had entered the hospital earlier approached them, microphone in hand. "Mr. Williams, I understand there was a significant delay in emergency response to your home tonight. Would you be willing to comment?" His father hesitated, torn between privacy and the bigger issue at stake. Dayon looked up at his father. "People need to know what happened," he said quietly, "so it doesn't happen to anyone else." His father nodded, squeezing his shoulder. "You're right." He turned to the reporter. "Yes, we'll comment. This story needs to be told." As the cameras began to roll, Dayon stood tall beside his father, ready to tell the world how a system meant to protect everyone had failed his family because of the color of their skin, and what it might cost them. Behind them, the doors to the operating room swung shut, his mother's life hanging in the balance. The harsh fluorescent lights of the hospital waiting room made everyone look pale and tired. Dayon sat beside his father, both of them staring at the clock on the wall. It had been 2 hours since his mother had been rushed back into surgery. 2 hours of waiting, hoping, and praying. The news crew had left after getting their story. Captain Reynolds had gone too, promising to return with updates on the investigation. The waiting room had slowly emptied until only Dayon, his father, and a few of his father's co-workers remained. "You should try to get some sleep," his father said, rubbing his eyes. "There's an on-call room down the hall with a bed." Dayon shook his head. "I'm not tired." It wasn't exactly true, but he couldn't imagine sleeping while his mother fought for her life. His father didn't argue. Instead, he pulled out his phone and showed Dayon a picture. "I took this while you were talking to Captain Reynolds." It was a photo of his baby sister in the NICU, tiny body dwarfed by the incubator, miniature fist curled near her face. "She's so small," Dayon whispered. "But strong," his father said. "The nurses say she's got quite a grip. Takes after her mother that way." Dayon stared at the picture, trying to process that this was his sister. The sister who might grow up without a mother, because someone decided their emergency wasn't important enough. A thought suddenly struck him. "Dad, do you think there are other people this has happened to? People who called 911 and didn't get help in time?" His father's expression darkened. "I'm afraid that's very likely, but they might not know why help didn't come. Or they might not have had another way to get help like we did." Dayon thought about that. How many other families had faced emergencies, called for help, and been ignored? How many hadn't been as lucky as his family? With a nurse for a father and a hospital to call directly. "There must be a way to find out," he said slowly. "Like a record of all the 911 calls and how long it took for help to arrive." His father looked at him with a mixture of pride and surprise. "You're right. Those records exist. Emergency Services keeps logs of all calls and response times. Could we get those records? It might take a court order or a formal investigation, but yes, they could be obtained." Dayon nodded, ideas forming in his mind.
What about the hospital?
"Does it keep records of how patients get here? Like who comes by ambulance versus who comes on their own?" His father was fully attentive now. "Yes, every admission includes the method of arrival." "Why are you asking?" "I'm thinking," Dayon said carefully, "that if we could compare the 911 call logs with hospital records, we might be able to see a pattern. Like, do certain neighborhoods wait longer for ambulances? Do certain people have to find their own way to the hospital more often?" His father stared at him. That's actually brilliant, Dayon. That kind of data analysis could prove if there's systematic discrimination in emergency response." One of his father's colleagues, a doctor named Dr. Washington who had been sitting nearby, leaned forward. "Your son is onto something, Michael. We've suspected for years that response times vary by neighborhood, but we've never had the data to prove it." "The hospital has an emergency management system, right?" Dayon asked. "The one that coordinates with ambulances and stuff?" His father nodded. "Yes, the emergency department information system. It tracks all incoming cases, ambulance locations, that sort of thing. Could we use that to look at the patterns?" Dayon pressed. Dr. Washington exchanged glances with his father. "It's not that simple. Patient data is protected by privacy laws, but..." She hesitated. "If we stripped out personal information and just looked at response times by location, that might be possible." Dayon's father pulled out his hospital ID badge, turning it over in his hands thoughtfully. "I have access to the basic system, but not the analytics module. For that, we'd need administrative approval. Or Dr. Rivera's login, Dr. Washington said quietly. As chief of emergency medicine, he has full access. His father looked torn. I can't ask him to risk his position. You wouldn't have to, Dr. Washington replied, her expression determined. After what happened to your family tonight, I think he'd volunteer. As if summoned by their conversation, Dr. Rivera appeared at the entrance to the waiting room. Dayon and his father jumped to their feet. She's stable, Dr. Rivera said immediately, holding up his hands in a calming gesture. We found and stopped another bleeder. She's still critical, but her vitals are holding. Dayon felt his knees go weak with relief. His father let out a shaky breath. Thank you, his father said, his voice rough with emotion. Can we see her? In a bit, Dr. Rivera said. They're settling her back in ICU now. He glanced at Dr. Washington, then back at Dayon's father. Michael, there's something else we need to discuss. In private. Dayon's father looked down at him. Stay here, son. I'll be right back. Dayon watched as the three medical professionals moved to a corner of the waiting room, speaking in hushed tones. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could see his father's expression grow increasingly animated. Dr. Washington nodding emphatically and Dr. Rivera looking grave but resolute. After a few minutes, they returned. Dr. Rivera looked directly at Dayon. Your father tells me you've had an idea about how to investigate emergency response patterns, he said. I'd like to hear it from you. Surprised, Dayon explained his thought process. As he spoke, Dr. Rivera's expression became increasingly impressed. Out of the mouths of babes, he murmured when Dayon finished. We've been trying to get traction on this issue for years, but without hard data, it's been impossible to prove. So you'll help? Dayon asked hopefully. Dr. Rivera nodded. Yes, in fact, I'm going to do more than just help. I'm going to open an official quality improvement investigation, which gives me authority to access all the necessary systems. He looked at Dayon's father. Michael, I'd like you to be part of this. Your background in emergency nursing will be valuable. Of course, his father agreed immediately. What about me? Dayon asked. Can I help too? The adults exchanged glances. Technically, hospital systems are restricted to staff, Dr. Rivera began. But, Dr. Washington interjected, given that you're the one who came up with this idea, and you've witnessed firsthand what we're trying to investigate, I think we could make a case for your involvement as a community consultant. Dayon's father smiled slightly. A community consultant who happens to be 11 years old. Age is just a number, Dr. Rivera said, surprising them all. Intelligence and insight are what matter, and your son has demonstrated plenty of both tonight. A nurse appeared at the doorway. Dr. Rivera? Mrs. Williams is settled in ICU now. Her family can see her. Go, Dr. Washington said to Dayon and his father. We'll start setting things up for the investigation. As they followed the nurse to the ICU, Dayon's father put an arm around his shoulders. I'm so proud of you, he said quietly. You know that, right? Not just for how you handled the emergency, but for thinking beyond it. For seeing the bigger picture. Dayon nodded, a lump in his throat. I just don't want anyone else to go through this. They entered his mother's room in the ICU. She looked marginally better than before. Some color had returned to her cheeks, and the ventilator was gone, replaced by a simple oxygen mask. The steady beep of her heart monitor was reassuring. His father went immediately to her side, taking her hand and speaking softly to her. Dayon hung back, suddenly overcome by the realization that his mother had nearly died, might still die, and it could have been prevented if help had come when he first called. A fierce determination welled up inside him. He would make sure this never happened again. To anyone. 3 days later, Dayon sat in Dr. Rivera's office, staring at a computer screen filled with data points and maps. His mother was still in the ICU but improving steadily. His sister, whom they'd named Hope, was gaining strength in the NICU, and Dayon had thrown himself into the investigation with a focus that impressed even the seasoned medical professionals. It's clear as day, Dr. Washington said, pointing at the screen. Average response times in predominantly black neighborhoods are 7.2 minutes longer than in predominantly white neighborhoods, even when controlling for distance from emergency stations. And look at this, Dayon's father added, pulling up another chart. Calls from Oak Meadows were marked as standby or low priority, at 3 times the rate of calls from Riverside Heights, despite similar types of reported emergencies. Dr. Rivera nodded grimly. The data doesn't lie. This is systematic discrimination, plain and simple. What happens now? Dayon asked, looking at the three adults. Now, Dr. Rivera said, we take this to the hospital board, the mayor's office, and the media. All at once. He smiled slightly. I've already scheduled the meetings. Captain Reynolds had been conducting his own investigation in parallel. That evening he met with them in Tanya's hospital room. She was awake now, weak but improving, able to have short conversations before tiring. We've reviewed all calls handled by Vicky Harmon in the past 3 months, the captain reported. There's a clear pattern of delayed response to certain neighborhoods, particularly Oak Meadows and West Side. We've also discovered she's been involved with an online group that, well, let's just say they have very disturbing views about race. Has she been fired? Tanya asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Fired and arrested, Captain Reynolds confirmed. She's facing charges of criminal negligence and civil rights violations. This isn't just about breaking department policy. She actively endangered lives. Will it stick? Dion's father asked skeptically. With the evidence we have, plus what your team has uncovered. Captain Reynolds nodded confidently. Yes, I believe it will. Dayon looked around the room, at his mother in the hospital bed, at his father holding her hand, at the medical professionals and police captain who had helped turn his idea into action. Something good was coming from their tragedy. A system that had failed them was being held accountable, and changes were already beginning. The next morning, Dayon stood beside his father in a conference room packed with reporters. The mayor was there, along with the hospital administrator, Dr. Rivera, and Captain Reynolds. On a large screen behind them were the damning statistics they had uncovered. Irrefutable evidence of a two-tiered emergency response system that valued some lives less than others. As the press conference began, Dayon's father stepped forward to tell their story. But before he spoke, he turned to Dayon. Would you like to say something? He asked quietly. This all started because of you. Dayon hesitated, then nodded. His father guided him to the microphone, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. Facing the sea of cameras and reporters, Dayon took a deep breath. He wasn't just speaking for himself or his family anymore. He was speaking for everyone who had ever called for help and been deemed unworthy of receiving it. 3 nights ago, he began, his young voice steady and clear, I called 911 because my mom needed help. I was told to wait. But some emergencies can't wait, and some people shouldn't have to. As flashbulbs popped and cameras whirred, Dayon continued, sharing not just what had happened to his family, but what they had discovered was happening to an entire community. And as he spoke, he knew that their response, his response, had set in motion changes that would save lives for years to come. 6 weeks had passed since that terrifying night when Dayon found his mother collapsed on the bathroom floor. Today he stood on their front porch, watching anxiously as his father helped Tanya from the car. His little sister Hope, still tiny but now deemed healthy enough to leave the hospital, was cradled in his mother's arms. Home sweet home, his father said, supporting Tanya with one arm while carrying a hospital bag with the other. Dayon rushed forward to open the door. I got everything ready, he said proudly. The crib is set up and I cleaned the whole house yesterday. His mother smiled tiredly. The ordeal had taken a toll. 6 weeks in the hospital, 2 major surgeries, and countless transfusions had left her thinner and weaker than before. But she was alive. They all were. Thank you, sweetheart, she said, kissing the top of his head as she passed. You've been so brave through all of this. Brave. The word didn't seem adequate for what Dayon had been through, or what he had accomplished. In the weeks since his mother's emergency, his life had changed in ways he could never have imagined. The press conference had been just the beginning. The data analysis he had initiated with Dr. Rivera and his father had uncovered patterns of discrimination so stark and so damning that they couldn't be ignored. Response times to predominantly black neighborhoods averaged nearly 8 minutes longer than to white neighborhoods of similar distance from emergency stations. Calls from certain zip codes were routinely downgraded in priority without justification. And Vicky Harmon wasn't the only dispatcher engaging in this practice. The story had gone national. Dayon had appeared on morning shows, news programs, and even a documentary that was currently being filmed. The shy 11-year-old had found his voice, speaking calmly and clearly about what had happened to his family, and what they had discovered was happening to many others. "Let me take Hope," Dion offered as they entered the living room. "You should sit down, Mom." Tanya carefully transferred the sleeping newborn to her son's arms. Dion had learned how to hold his sister during daily visits to the NICU, where the nurses had marveled at his gentle touch and careful attention. "You're a natural," his mother said, easing herself onto the couch with a wince. The C-section incision, complicated by the emergency circumstances and subsequent surgeries, was still healing. His father fussed around them, adjusting pillows, fetching water, checking that everything was in place for their first day home as a complete family. The doorbell rang. "That'll be Miss Patterson from next door," his father said. "She promised to bring over dinner." But when he opened the door, it wasn't their neighbor. It was Mayor Collins, accompanied by Captain Reynolds and a woman Dion recognized as the city council president. "I hope we're not intruding," the mayor said, "but we wanted to welcome Mrs. Williams and baby Hope home personally." This was another change in their lives. Important people now knew their names, their story. The mayor had become a regular visitor at the hospital, not just for the cameras, but because he seemed genuinely invested in their case and the changes it had sparked. "Please, come in," his father said, ushering them inside. Dion stood a little straighter, still cradling Hope carefully against his chest. Mayor Collins approached Tanya first, offering warm wishes for her continued recovery. Then he turned to Dion. "Young man, we have some news we wanted to share with you and your family in person," he said. "The city council met yesterday. The resolution passed unanimously." "Resolution?" Dion's father asked. Captain Reynolds stepped forward. "The 911 Reform Act," he explained, officially titled the Williams Family Emergency Response Equity Act. Dion's eyes widened. "You named it after us?" The city council president nodded. "It seemed fitting given that your family's experience and your subsequent investigation were what brought these issues to light." "What exactly does the act do?" Tanya asked. "Several things," Mayor Collins replied. "First, it mandates GPS tracking of all emergency vehicles, with response times automatically logged and reviewed weekly for disparities by neighborhood. Second, it creates an independent civilian oversight board with access to all call records and dispatch decisions. Third, it requires cultural sensitivity and anti-bias training for all emergency service personnel, with annual recertification. And fourth, Captain Reynolds added, looking directly at Dion, it establishes a new backup emergency alert system, modeled after what you created when you contacted the hospital directly. If the primary system fails for any reason, technical or human, there's now an alternative path to getting help. Dion felt a surge of pride. His desperation that night, reaching out to his father and the hospital directly, had inspired a systemic change that would help others. "There's more," the council president said. "The first meeting of the oversight board is next week, and we'd like Dion to serve as an honorary member. Your perspective would be invaluable." His parents exchanged glances. "He's still a child," his father said cautiously. "School has to remain his priority." "Of course," Mayor Collins agreed. "The position would involve just one meeting a month after school hours. We've already spoken with Principal Davis, who's supportive of the idea and believes it aligns with the school's community service program." Dion looked to his parents questioningly. "It's your decision," his mother said. "You've already done so much, more than anyone could have expected. You don't have to take this on too." But Dion knew immediately what his answer would be. "I want to do it," he said. "If it helps make sure no one else goes through what we did." After the officials left, promising to be in touch about the details of Dion's new role, the family settled into a quiet evening at home. Hope slept peacefully in her bassinet, tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. Tanya rested on the couch, color slowly returning to her cheeks. His father moved around the kitchen, preparing a simple dinner. Dion sat beside his mother, reflecting on everything that had happened. The terror of that night seemed distant now, overshadowed by what had come after. The investigation, the public attention, the changes being implemented. "A penny for your thoughts," his mother said, noticing his pensive expression. "I was just thinking about Vicky Harmon," Dion admitted. The dispatcher's criminal trial was scheduled to begin the following month. She faced multiple charges, including criminal negligence and civil rights violations. "Are you nervous about testifying?" his mother asked gently. Dion had been called as a key witness for the prosecution. The recordings of his 911 calls were powerful evidence, but the prosecutors wanted the jury to hear directly from the child who had been denied help. A little, he confessed, but mostly I just want to understand. Understand what? Why she did it. How someone whose job is to help people could just not care. His mother was quiet for a moment. Some people carry hate in their hearts, she finally said. They make judgments about others based on where they live or what they look like, without seeing them as real people with lives and families. But you can't do that when you're responsible for people's lives. Dayon insisted. No, you can't, his mother agreed. That's why what you did is so important. You showed that those judgments have real consequences, and you made it harder for people to keep making them. From the kitchen, his father called, "Dinner's ready." As they gathered around the table, Hope now awake and cradled in one of his father's arms while he awkwardly served food with the other, Dayon felt a sense of peace settling over him. Their ordeal had nearly torn his family apart, but instead it had made them stronger, more determined. The following Sunday, Dayon stood nervously at the podium in City Hall Plaza. Behind him sat the mayor, the city council, and a row of emergency service officials. Before him stretched a crowd of hundreds, many holding signs with messages like 8 minutes too long and all. Neighborhoods deserve equal protection. This was the official signing ceremony for the Williams Family Emergency Response Equity Act. As the inspiration for the legislation, Dayon had been asked to say a few words. He looked out at the sea of faces, people from all over the city, from different neighborhoods and backgrounds, united in their belief that everyone deserved the same chance at help when they needed it. 6 weeks ago, he began, his voice clear despite his nerves. I called 911 because my mom needed help. I was told to wait. For 8 long minutes, I believed that help was coming. For 8 long minutes, my mom's life slipped away while someone decided we weren't worth saving. A hush fell over the crowd. But today isn't about what went wrong that night. It's about making sure it goes right for everyone from now on. He gestured to the document on the table beside him. This act won't fix everything. It won't end all the biases people carry, but it will make those biases harder to act on. It will make it harder to ignore a call for help because of where it comes from or who it comes from. He looked back at his parents, sitting in the front row. His mother held Hope, who was awake and alert, tiny fists waving in the air. His father nodded encouragingly. When I called 911 that night, I was just a kid trying to save his mom and baby sister. I didn't know I'd end up here. I didn't know we'd uncover a pattern that affected so many families. But now that we know, we can't unknow it. And we can't allow it to continue. He turned to the mayor, who rose to join him at the podium. Today, we're taking a step toward making sure that when anyone calls for help in our city, they receive it quickly, professionally, and equally. No matter where they live. No matter what they look like. No matter who they are. The mayor signed the document with a flourish, then handed the pen to Dayon. Your signature belongs on this too, he said. None of this would have happened without you. With careful penmanship, Dayon added his name beside the mayor's. The crowd erupted in applause, many rising to their feet. As he stepped away from the podium, Dayon caught sight of a familiar face in the crowd, a boy about his age watching with undisguised admiration. Their eyes met and Dayon smiled. Maybe that boy would go home today knowing that one person really could make a difference. That one voice really could spark change. Later that evening, as the family gathered in the nursery to put Hope to bed, his father placed a hand on Dayon's shoulder. You know, he said quietly, what you did, standing up, speaking out, refusing to accept that some lives matter less than others, that took incredible courage. I just did what needed to be done, Dayon replied, watching as his mother gently laid Hope in her crib. That's what courage is, his father said. Doing what needs to be done, even when it's hard, even when you're scared. His mother joined them, wrapping an arm around Dayon's shoulders. You saved more than just us that night, she whispered. You may never know all the lives that will be saved because of the changes you set in motion. As they stood together, watching Hope drift off to sleep, Dayon thought about all the people who might face emergencies in the future, people who would now receive help promptly, regardless of their address or the color of their skin. People who would never know that their lives had been saved because an 11-year-old boy refused to accept injustice. That, he realized, was the true aftermath of their ordeal. Not just their family's healing, Not just one dispatcher's accountability, but a ripple effect of change that would continue long after their personal story faded from the headlines. "We did it together," Dayon said, leaning into his parents' embrace. "And we're not done yet."